People's Democratic Party has called on President Muhammadu Buhari to sack the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Pantami, for his alleged sympathy for terrorist organizations, including the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and Boko Haram. The party also asked the Department of State Security to invite the minister for questioning. According to a statement by the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Kola Olubodinyo, quote, "Our party's position is predicated on the heightening concerns in the public space and in the international arena of possible compromises by the communication minister, who has access to sensitive government documents and information, in addition to data of all individuals, including high-profile personalities in the public and private sectors, as well as the traditional and faith-based circles," end of quote. The minister's problem started last week when it was reported that he had been placed on the United States watch list for alleged terrorist links, a claim that the minister promptly denied before declaring that he was being targeted because of his insistence on the national identification number registration by every Nigerian and foreign resident in the country. Tundu, there are many layers to this, but this is highly sensitive and it's out there.
It is, isn't it? Well, the PDP is doing what one would expect as the opposition to do in making this call. They'll be remiss not to. But my issue is when you now have civil society organizations who are neutral coming down on the side of the PDP and saying that the minister should resign. For me, it's just unacceptable to have Nigeria as one of the top 3 most terrorized countries in the world, and you have somebody on the cabinet who has expressed sympathies towards Al-Qaeda and Taliban, even if it was in his childhood. It really is it looks bad. So I do back those calls for a resignation, but am I going to hold my breath? Absolutely not. I sincerely doubt that we will get a resignation. But unfortunately, it does look very bad, and it has cast a pall over the efforts that Dr. Pantami is making with his ministry. I mean, he's the one who suspended registration of SIM cards, reminding us that there are kinetic and non-kinetic approaches to the fight against terrorism, reminding us that the terrorists actually use phones to demand ransom, to post some of their really incendiary material. He's also the one trying to link NIN and SIMs to sort of tighten our security. Now, when you have somebody who has expressed the sentiments that he has expressed in that seat and having reminded us how crucial the Ministry of Communication is in this fight against terrorism, it does tend to give me, as a Nigerian, pause. I'm sorry, it just does. In fact, I'm not sorry at all.
Do you feel your data is safe?
Well, this is what I'm saying. No, it's giving me serious pause. And you now add to that the comments by 2 northern governors, one of whom said the people who are responsible for Boko Haram will shock Nigerians if Nigerians knew. The other one talked about people in government, and highly placed people in politics being responsible. Then you now wonder, is this one of the people that they're referring to? It's just really unfortunate. And while I do sympathize with Dr. Pantami, because he has sort of denounced those views that he had, I sympathize with him only to the extent that many of us have held opinions which today we would completely, contradict. And that's a human thing. You evolve, you grow. It's just that the nature of the opinions he held is not something that can be easily dismissed. You do not support criminals, no matter. I know so many pious Muslims that completely abhor Al-Qaeda, completely abhor the Taliban because of the extremism that they have caused and even the damage that they have done to the Muslim faith, to the actual deen. Most of the victims of Al-Qaeda and Taliban are actually Muslims. So I don't know how anybody can say that it's okay to accept this kind of behavior, then just say, oh, I've changed my mind. No, that doesn't quite cut it.
Dr. Bati?
Well, yes, truly, there are many dimensions to the story. The first dimension is that many years back, we were told by persons at the highest level of government that there were Boko Haram sympathizers in government. So the average Nigerian had always believed and suspected and had been disturbed by the fact that, well, is it really possible that there are persons who sympathize with Boko Haram at the highest echelons of governance in Nigeria? Now, so you can understand where civil society is coming from, where the PDP is coming from. Now that they seem to have found one person that they can attach something to, and then say, oh, this must be a Boko Haram sympathizer in government, he has to go. Now, don't forget that, Dr. Issa Pantami is also said to be a sheikh, a Muslim preacher. And there has been that, insinuation about him being a Boko Haram sympathizer in government before now. So it's on the basis of that that many people are emotionally reacting and saying that you cannot have a person who, espouses very strong Salafist, rhetoric or ideology inside government and occupying a sensitive position such as the Ministry of Communications Technology, which grants him access to sensitive data that could have implications for national security. But a lot of it is emotional. That's one point. The second point is that, the minister holds the position at the pleasure of the president. So there are people asking him to resign. Have you ever seen anybody who willingly resigns from the Nigerian government? Well, but there was controversy around it. There were circumstances that led to it, and there was concrete evidence. In Issa Pantami's case, even the Department of State of the United States has said that they have not put out any such information that is connected. The newspaper that accused him of connections with terrorism has also recanted. That's the Daily Independent newspaper. He himself has come forward to say that, well, when he was young, in the 2000s, yes, he supported the Taliban, he supported the Al-Qaeda, but he has since seen the light, and that he has since, reversed himself in that regard, and that he has given many lectures. But the counter-argument provided by People's Gazette and other platforms is that they've come up with videotapes, audio tapes, showing when, as a younger person, he supported extremism. And he expressed such views as saying that, Muslims are happy when unbelievers are killed, right? This is a case of the past coming back to haunt him. He himself has also argued that he's been targeted, and he has the support of the Muslim Rights Concern in this regard, led by Professor Ishaq Akintola, that he's been targeted because people are not happy with the national identity number registration process, or that, the telcos are also not happy with him. Now, it is up to the president to urge that an independent investigation should be carried out, and on the basis of that, to determine whether indeed or not, Issa Pantami has weaned himself off his extremist rhetoric and ideology and beliefs. But to the extent that he holds that office at the pleasure of the president, we should throw the ball into the court of the president to see whether he needs a liability or whether Issa Pantami is an asset to his administration, given the controversy that has emerged around them.
All right, that's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotu Diri, Michael Wilson, Adesu Amora, Aaron Akuredi. Let's give us updates on Africa global business, and spotting activities on COVID-19. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the morning show right on the rise, inshallah. Let's quickly go to Rotus. Rotus, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Rufai. Good morning to you. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundu. We kick things off with one of the most pressing issues facing Nigeria. That's revenue. Central Bank of Nigeria released its January economic report showing that January revenue for the country fell by 12% to 807 billion naira. That's for January 2021. And meanwhile, expenditure on the other side, that rose 7% to 770 billion. Think recovery in oil prices, oil accounted for 54% of revenue that came in January. Non-oil revenue underperformed as a result of, not being able to collect as much taxes as before, businesses not being affected by the pandemic and so on and so forth. Nigeria, again, has a revenue problem. The country has to find a way to augment the shortfall in revenues. It's something that we've talked about again and again and again. What I'm actually waiting to see now, so remember this figure of 807 billion revenue for January. Actually, for the first quarter, we'll have to wait to see the first quarter revenues and how much of this first quarter revenues went to debt servicing. The doctor talked about this last week. We talk about it all the time. So, we'll see what those figures are. But you have to keep in mind, as revenues are falling, expenditures are rising, there's the issue of how much of that goes to debt servicing. To the states, the Bureau of Statistics released the internally generated revenue for 2020 for the states. The states brought in 1.31 trillion naira in internally generated revenue in 2020, down about 2%, 1.95. You can approximate to 2% from 1.33 in 2019. Take a look at this chart here. we'll see that Lagos State accounted for 32.5%, the big blue circle on the right-hand side. Looking at the top 7, Lagos accounted for 32%, pretty much a third of how much came in, 418 billion. You look a little to, if you go clockwise, Rivers State at the bottom there, 9%, 117 billion. The FCT, 92 billion. My dear Delta State, where I hail from, 59.7 billion. And then Kaduna 50.75, Ogun State 50.74, Oyo State 38.4. This is the top 7. Now the thing is this, as Gordon Obaseki talked about, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, there's an issue of how much of FAC contributes to the revenue of each of these states. That's the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee. The states are overly dependent, minus Lagos. Take a look at Lagos here. And you'll see that with Lagos IGR, now this is a bunch of circles and highlights. What's highlighted there, total revenue for Lagos came in at 534 billion. As I said, Lagos raised its own internally generated revenue of 418. So 115 came from FAC. So if you see those 2 blue circles there, 21% of Lagos's revenue came from FAC allocations. Meanwhile, 78%, a healthy 78% of Lagos revenue, the circle to the right, came from its own generated revenue. Go to Rivers State now. You can see the flip. Rivers State, 54% of River, and this is the state that came in second, right? At 117 billion, which is what? A third of what Lagos brought in. 54% of internally generated revenue for Rivers State was from FAC allocations. Just 45% was from its own internally generated revenue. My dear Delta State, it gets worse. Delta State, 75% of Delta State's revenue came from FAC. Only 24% came from its own internally generated revenue, and on and on. What's the next state? I think we have Edo. Okay, for those that are curious, Edo State, Gordon Obaseki State, I put that in there. 68% of Edo State's revenue came from FAC allocations, 31%, and then President Buhari state of Katsina, take a look at that, 84. Katsina, Gombe, Jigawa, 80, they're in the 80% range. So 80 naira out of every 100 naira that these states brought in are from FAC. Look at that, 15%, 15.6% IGR. I think Doctor mentioned Imo states at the top of the hour, and the violence that's going on in Imo State. Well, you can see why. Imo State, keep in mind, has the highest unemployment in Nigeria at 54%. Look at Imo State's FAC allocation. 76% of Imo State's revenue come from FAC. Only 23% is what the state generates. And on and on. So these states outside of Lagos State, one state out of the entire country is able to generate revenue on its own. Meanwhile, all the rest depend on FAC. So it's a pretty ugly situation when you look at the states. What else is going on? I think we take a look at USSD. This saga is not over quite yet. The telcos are insisting that the banks pay for the 42 billion that's being owed. We got comments from the chairman, Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, Mr. Gbenga Adebayo. He said it's a moral burden on the banks to pay this 42 billion USSD debt, and he's calling on the Central Bank of Nigeria and the NCC and the Ministry of Communications, and Mr. Pantami has other problems of his own, but he's got to face this as well. Uber drivers and Bolts in Nigeria are threatening to halt services today if their portion of revenues are not increased. That is to say, they are saying increase in petrol, increase in spare parts. Petrol is imported. Spare parts in Nigeria are imported. They say they should be compensated for the increase. And they're saying that as of today, I didn't use an Uber to the office today, but I don't know, they could halt services. Some of them could halt their services today. Some have said that Uber in the UK and the US are exporting their activist behaviors to Nigeria. But hey, prices are going up, there are compensations there. And then quickly, South Africa, tomato prices are rising in South Africa as a result of some supply shortages that are there. See, South Africa doesn't have enough problems. And that's our update.
I mean, quick one. This just goes out to show what we've always clamored for as regards the state. And it even goes further to the big argument against how resources are controlled in this country. This can't continue. The states can't continue to depend on FAC. They need to be able to raise their money internally. But their quick argument will be, We don't have access to VAT. We don't have access to this. We don't have access to that. Maybe if we collected that. But the question is, how will they manage what they have collected? Because they don't have access to VAT, yet they have a lot of minerals, yet they have a lot of land space to be able to flip the card. I keep telling you about Bamdele Ayemibo. Rotus, you need to bring that guy in.
I will.
He broke down everything, how the states can make revenue. States like you're talking about, Katsina, how they can make money from gum arabic and some other cash crops. The states are laden with a lot of potentials that the governor can still harmonize. But I think this fact we all go to collect has made us mentally lazy.
Indeed.
Very lazy. This can't continue. Appalling.
Well, I think the quick point to make is that many of the states in Nigeria are not centers of productivity. They are centers of consumption.
Yes.
And over the years, they've turned themselves into a beggarly mode. And this is the cost of oil that people talk about, the Dutch disease. We found oil, and people stopped thinking in the various states. Many of the states are actually not viable. Now, when you contrast that with what happened during the First Republic, look, the Western region used cocoa money to build the first skyscraper in Nigeria. They used cocoa money to build television station, the very first in the whole of Africa. Now, what happened to all of these states? Many of the states in the East, the whole of the Eastern region, under, I think it's Michael Okpara.
Yeah, Michael
there was a lot of creativity, there was a lot of innovation, there was manufacturing, but over the years, we got into this cost of oil, and we've not been able to get out of it, which is the most unfortunate thing about the Nigerian story. And nobody should be surprised that we have a revenue problem. Experts have said it repeatedly, that the problem is not GDP to debt ratio. It's about revenue. How do you get revenue? If your economy is not productive, then of course you keep running into this ditch. I don't want to strike the argument for that, to say that perhaps there's a connection between this your report about revenue crisis and the point that was being made the other day that became controversial by the governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki.
All right.
I understand we don't have more time.
Thank you so much, Rotus. Really appreciate you. We'll go to Michael real quickly. Michael, good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm going to start off with shares in Asia Pacific because that's in our timescale. That's what we normally do. Mostly rose, apart from India, mainland Chinese stocks. I'll come on to that in a second. Led gains among the region's main markets. Overall, then, this sort of robust economic data we got from China, totally expected, of course, last week. And also the fact that COVID-19 in certain countries, vaccinations are going quite well. But India, let's talk about India in specific. A tumble of both the Nifty 50 and the BSE Sensex dropped more than 2% each. The COVID situation is weighing very, very heavily there as far as COVID's concerned. I'm going to slip now to Alibaba in Hong Kong. It came after Ant Group. Now, here's a peculiar kind of thing. There was a report that Ant Group was looking, or at least a tweet, looking to replace Jack Ma. It came from Reuters. That was the report over the weekend. The company has said it's not true at all. So that caused a bit of a drop there. It's still a rather mysterious story. Remember, he's not really been properly seen in public for a long, long time, ever since Ant's IPO was pulled last autumn. As far as digital currencies are concerned, China's trying to make it possible for foreign athletes and visitors to use its digital currency during the Winter Olympics in 2022. Deputy Governor of the People's Bank of China said that the aim of the digital yuan, or we're going to call it the ECNY, that's what we're going to call it, is aimed at replacing cash and coins, but it's not a cryptocurrency and it's not like Bitcoin. Speaking of which, a lot of excitement last week about Coinbase. Bitcoin actually tumbled massively over the weekend, so really underlining its volatility. Japan exports strongest growth in more than 3 years in March, in a sign that their economic recovery is getting underway. I'm going to come back to Japan in a moment, but let's just do whilst we're on the markets, do a US recap. Stock futures as far as United States States are concerned, mixed in Asian trading. Stocks are coming off after a week of strong earnings data. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that slightly later on. Let's go back to Japan, hoping that the US-Japan trade talks, President Joe Biden sought to sort of have a representative, a united front, I think is the way to put it, with the Japan Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga to combat China recently, which is getting aggressively assertive as we speak, and also the business of the Taiwan Strait, which we were talking about last week. The US is trying to resource rare earths. It's trying to stop its dependence upon China. For that, the Biden administration, we were talking about this yesterday in the last week, Department of Energy have targeted rare earths among those kind of things that they want to have as sort of strategic assets rather than relying on China to get that. The stimulus checks, or the stimmy checks, as they're called in the United States, being spent on champagne skirts and shaving kits, apparently. Some of the items, retail sales up massively on Friday, as we talked about, 9.8%, and people are actually making plans. On that theme, the global households amass a cash fund and saving $5.4 trillion. The hopes for post-COVID spending actually quite strong when bars, shops and restaurants reopen. That money, that trillions, is 6% of world output. That's what's actually in people's pockets right now. Facebook going to say its employees can continue to work from home. This is slightly mixed. Twitter's Jack Dorsey made headlines at the same time, announced his employees can now work from home forever. However, Google announced it was bringing forward its timetable of moving people back into the office. So who knows? European football. Here's an interesting one, a Super League. The big ones are actually the Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, and then they're joining a new European Super League despite UEFA and also the main World Cup authority saying that they shouldn't do it. We'll see about that. But money's the driving thing. They've lost actually huge amounts of money during the COVID thing because people have not been going along to football matches. So we see that. That's actually growing now. Let's go to the UK. House prices highest ever. Average price 328,000. Not that one, I'm guessing. And that's according to, and also people will only need 5% of a deposit of the total value of the house before they can get a mortgage on certain kinds of houses. Not sure that's a great idea, but again, maybe something to talk about future. I showed you those queues at airports for people coming back into the country. Now it looks like airline staff may help with COVID vetting. I hope they do, because certainly I will not be travelling, and I'm sure lots of people won't be travelling abroad. You've got to wait 6 hours at an airport to get back in again. US price rises, factory gates prices up 46% versus 27% in the previous 3 months of companies saying that they will actually increase prices as a result of shortages. A big UK fast food deal here, the Issa brothers, billionaire brothers who own Asda, they brought Leon, which is a fast food chain. Deal includes 42 company-owned restaurants and so on, 29 franchise sites. So that's actually quite a big thing. You remember the failure or the not glittering success of the Deliveroo IPO during the week, but people still want fast food. Looking ahead to commodities and oil prices, slightly lower. Brent crude got it about 67 a barrel this morning, but you won't be too disappointed with that as a revenue-liking country. There's a lot coming up in the week. The ECB have their central meeting. They're not going to say much. I suspect they'll continue with this kind of narrative that central banks do about supporting economies. We got CBI here, consumer confidence. We've got a load of flash PMIs, and we do have that big reporting season. I'm actually throwing my hat into the ring about this slightly. I really wouldn't take too much notice of companies reporting this time around. They've been quite good. I think what we're going to see is that even the stocks slightly falling, even though stocks got into record territory in the United States, I think we may see a creaming off of profits over the next few weeks. But generally speaking, reporting season doing quite well. That's your global view.
All right.
Good morning.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for that insight. Two quick things I'd like to talk about this morning. Number one is the SPACs. A lot of people are coming out to say these deals, if you sort of want to look at it very critically, it's another Bernie Madoff in the making, this SPACs deal. They are trying to do a deal with a company that was ruined by Adam Newman, that's WeWalk. They're trying to do deals that you know can't move anywhere, can't move the needle. It just looks as though they are putting investors' money on the line, and a lot of people are supporting them. The banks, they're not saying anything because they know they will trim off the profits. So what is really happening? Because a lot of people don't get it. And Michael, secondly, I want to ask you about the big scandal that came out of, the COVID-19 palliatives in the UK. Companies that had close political associates got deals worth 50, 60 billion, over 200 billion pounds sterling can't be accounted for. It was just an access to power. They call something the VIP lane. The New York Times did a big reportage on it, an extensive survey of about 1,500 companies, and they said Britain could have done better, but they didn't do better. But before you answer that real quickly, I'm just correcting myself. VAT, states get 85% of the VAT in Nigeria, and 15% goes to the federal government. Just a quick correction. I think I made a flaw on that. But Michael, those two quick insights.
Okay, first of all, as far as the New York Times is concerned, remember that the New York Times is written for an Irish minority in New York. It's always been a very liberal newspaper. And I think also if you get public money being thrown at something in a hurry, it doesn't matter which country it's in. And I'm not defending what happened in the UK, just putting it into context. If it happened in the United States, and it has done with the big stimulus checks there, again, furlough schemes here, companies taking advantage, of course they will. Unfortunately, that's what happens when politicians rush out money because they want to be seen to be doing something. There will be lots of stories about this coming up, and it will happen in all developed economies around the world. Criminals will take advantage of gaps in markets, in public money being thrown out to show that politicians are doing something. I do feel as though that's really something that I hope to see a lot of investigations in, and a lot of that will actually happen as we're going along. What was the second thing that you wanted me to talk about?
SPACs was the second thing. Reckless investment. Okay. Reckless.
Yeah. Well, I've said in the past about SPACs, nothing new about getting a load of investors' money and then separately asset managers looking for companies within which to invest that. I don't think it's a great idea, but you put your finger on it as usual. What you need to do is you need to say to yourself, is it right that my money is being invested in that kind of a company? What's the management of that company like? Do I think it's realistic? Do I trust the investment managers? Actually, anything to do with SPACs, which looks too good to be true, is too good to be true. I don't think it's a Bernie Madoff thing. I think a Bernie Madoff thing was about pyramids. This isn't about pyramids. This is about good or bad investment, as always. And you are always at risk if you invest your money. My thought is you should be looking very, very carefully. As I said, I've always long about this. I mean, it will be fashionable. SPACs will continue until the next big thing arrives. But you do need to look at what's actually being invested in and the managers of that investment money very, very carefully indeed. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Well, very quickly, three quick things, and I'll try to be brief. The first one, the European Super League, with these 12 top teams in Europe saying that they are moving ahead to make more money, to open up revenue for the clubs that have been suffering. Can they get it over the line, considering the overwhelmingly negative reaction that we have seen from fans, from the Premier League, from UEFA, and even from FIFA, that is threatening that players that get involved and clubs that get involved in that European Super League will be sanctioned? Second, you raised the point about Facebook. All of that talk is about the future of work. What should we expect? I mean, Facebook says you can work from home if the managers approve, but there are other companies that says that insist that will not work. Goldman Sachs, Google, okay. Microsoft, and then finally, Jack Ma. At what point will they leave him alone? Is it when he exits completely from the Ant Group, as Reuters is reporting, or when he divests, as the financial regulators of China are demanding?
Okay, football first. It's all about money, and the big clubs in those countries I mentioned before, and those particular clubs I mentioned, do actually rule the roost. Yes, the regulators will be cross about that. So will the Premier League. Italy and France and Germany not joining in. It's follow the money is the answer to that one, and we'll see how it develops. It's nothing to do with the sport itself. It's to do with highly paid players. If you think about it, if it concentrates matches amongst those big clubs into more and more matches midweek and at the weekends as well, then it's going to be a cluster of very expensively paid, very tired players, I would suggest, or it'll be clubs with a huge amount of money that can have an enormous player pool to cope with that. It's all about the money. That's all I'd say about that. Jack Ma, if he surfaces, I think we'd like to hear from him now. I think that would be quite interesting. He won't get many friends in China, but then again, it doesn't look like the authorities like him at all. It looks like they want to break up what Alibaba and fintech companies like that have done. There is a move against high-tech companies in China. I think that will probably continue. Will Alibaba survive? I don't know. It may well be broken up. Let's see. But it's down to the authorities versus the likes of Jack Ma and so on. And I would continue to say, don't do as people say, watch what they actually do. What's China doing at the moment? It's breaking up. It wants to break up these high-tech companies. They've got too big for their boots as far as China's concerned. I would say no more. Not what people say, it's what they actually do. As far as the future of work's concerned, I think it's a great mistake for people to work from home. Yes, it's nice to do it. I can, but then again, I'm semi-retired. If I was starting my career, I'd want to get into the office and I'd want to follow and watch what people do, because that's how you learn. Your bosses can tell you quite a bit, but your bosses are not that adept at doing things, are they? I mean, have you ever met bosses who can actually, tell you exactly what to do and help you with your help you in a selfless way with your ambitions? I doubt it very much indeed, because they don't exist. What exists is you going into an office, watching what people do, and then not necessarily making the same mistakes as they do, seeing what works and copying it. That's how people actually learn to live. They always have, and that's how they'll learn to work.
I couldn't agree more. Intangibles like culture, office culture, are really important, especially at the beginning of a career. I wanted to talk to you. You raised the story about the sale of Leon and linked it to Deliveroo, the future of that industry, because Leon isn't just a regular fast food company. It's billed as a healthy fast food company. Is that where we're going? And also look at the rise of plant-based meats. I mean, I had a personal experiment with veganism, and I was surprised to even find that we have options here, and we in Nigeria are unashamed carnivores. So all over the world, it appears that that field is growing larger and larger, the healthy, sort of conscious eating, and the industry is growing along with it.
Leon is not about veganism, it's just fast food. I mean, they do quite nice stuff. It says it's very natural. It's that sells, doesn't it? It's not really natural. I mean, it's fast food. If you want to get really natural, you'll do what you did and experiment with plant-based meat and all the rest of it. I mean, that's the way. I'm no dietitian. All I know is I'm as big a carnivore as anybody else. I think, though, that the important thing will be, can Leon, because it is basically city-based, can it actually get business from people who are going back to work? That is going to be the most important thing, I would suggest.
Time will tell. Thank you so much for your time, Michael Wilson. Right, we go straight to COVID-19 update at this tomorrow. The pandemic is not relenting.
Indeed, Rufai, it is not. Good morning, and good morning, Dr. Bati, as well as Sundun.
Morning.
Now, more people have been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the past 7 days than any other week since the start of the pandemic. Total of 5.2 million cases globally were recorded in these last 7 days. And countries such as India and Brazil are fueling this increase. And as you said, Rufai, it's casting doubt on any hope that the pandemic or that the end of the pandemic is in sight, despite vaccination rollout by countries globally. Now, the death toll as well is resuming momentum. Fatalities have increased for the past month and have now surpassed the 3 million mark globally. Let's put this into perspective. 3 million lives lost is about equal to the population of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, Caracas, Venezuela, or even Ekiti State here in Nigeria. 3 million lives, that's a lot. But let's look at the statistics in Nigeria. In the last 24 hours, only 6 states accounted for the latest infection. 26 infections were reported. No deaths have been reported in Nigeria in the last 24 hours. And Ebonyi State saw the most infections with 10, followed by Lagos. Lagos had 9 cases, rather. So that's it. As regards vaccination rollout in Nigeria, the latest data shows that 1,096,000 people have now been vaccinated. A closer look at the states shows that about 12 states are yet to hit their 50% mark in the first phase of the campaign, aimed at inoculating frontline workers, health workers, strategic leaders, and those aged 70 and above. And some of those 12 states include Abia, which remains very low, Akwa Ibom, Ebonyi, Taraba, Sokoto, as well as the Federal Capital Territory. I must tell you that even Kogi, which was the last state, has surpassed 50% of its vaccination rollout for this first phase targeted at those people I mentioned to you. Kogi is doing about 58%, I think, at the moment. Well, speaking about the vaccination updates in Nigeria, the NPHCDA over the weekend gave a press briefing, and from that press briefing, we learned a few things. I'm just going to take you through some of them. As at 16th of April, out of the 1,071,000 Nigerians that have been vaccinated, there were a total of 8,439 mild adverse events following immunization reported. These mild reactions range from pain, swelling at the site of inoculation to body pains and nausea, while 52 cases of moderate to severe incidents of adverse reaction, which include fever, vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, dizziness, and allergic reactions were also reported. We're told at our press briefing that 5 states have the highest records of these reactions, and they are Kaduna, which reported the highest at 970, Cross River, Yobe, Kebbi, and Lagos with the least reactions with 448 out of the 5 highest states with reactions that we have seen. But most importantly, we were told that there is no deaths have been recorded from the administration of the AstraZeneca vaccine in Nigeria, and we have no case of blood clot related to the vaccine as well in Nigeria. Now, for the long-awaited outcome of the investigation into the alleged vaccine mismanagement and sharp practice in the Falomo police station and other centers in Lagos, the NPHCDA says investigations have now revealed that the reports were inaccurate and do not represent what transpired in those locations. However, it said that it was not unaware of attempts by individuals who are not eligible to access the vaccines with willing accomplices, and in some cases they might have been successful. However, those centers that were in the news that the reports were inaccurate, we'll leave that to the jury. And finally, we were told that because of the global supply shortage, there has now been a reassessment of the rollout campaign in Nigeria to enable everyone who has had a first shot to receive a second dose pending when Nigeria gets its next shipment of vaccine. And quickly away from Nigeria, the touted COVID-19 tonic in Madagascar is failing to halt an increase in COVID-19 cases in that country. Schools and hotels in Madagascar are now being transformed into hospitals as the cases surge on the Indian Ocean island. The spike is mostly due to the South African variant, which is causing the second wave in the country. It was only just last week Madagascar signed on to the COVAX facility to access vaccines. You will recall that President Rohalina has been adamant about this CVO, the COVID-19 tonic, in the country. Meanwhile, let me tell you that the U.S. has now marked another milestone in its vaccination campaign, despite hurdles including the recent halting of the J&J vaccine following those 6 cases of blood clots after vaccination. The data by the CDC released yesterday shows that half of U.S. adults have now received at least 1 COVID-19 vaccine dose, and more than 129 million people of ages 18 and older, which is 50.4% of the total adult population in the country. Also, more than 83 million adults, or 32.5% of total adult population in the U.S., are now fully vaccinated with one of the 3 vaccines approved in the U.S., which are the Pfizer-Moderna vaccine, as well as the J&J, which is temporarily halted.
I mean, for me, the interesting part is, as vaccinations go up, you start to see those hospitalizations drop. So there's a method to the madness. It just shows that if you can take the vaccine, and not just take the vaccine, because the vaccine is just letting your system be aware that there's something called coronavirus. We take the vaccine, we still wash our hands, we wear face masks. Personally, I think the mask mandate will go on for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And we should, and we should just stick to it. The mask mandate will go on for quite a while. So once we can understand that, let us forget all of the, fights going on amongst pharmaceuticals and the problems. I'm not saying let's forget the problems of blood clots. The scientists are working on that. But when you look at it, it far outweighs the blood clot, because every vaccine you'll use in this world have 1 or 2 side effects or reactions. And since we can nip this in the bud, let us go out there and take the vaccine. And also, supply chain mechanism of getting the vaccines in. And this is why I don't know what the talk is about Johnson & Johnson. They said Johnson & Johnson were going to come in at some point. I don't know if that has been shipped to Nigeria, because Johnson & Johnson is stalling on some of his pledges because of what is happening around the world. Look at Canada, for instance. Canada is a classical case that your money can't save you. Canada has booked enough vaccine that 5 people, 1 person can get 5 vaccines, but they don't have the vaccine yet. I was talking to somebody in Ontario the other day. There's a big surge now of COVID in Ontario.
Yes.
Canada is dealing with the crisis again.
They have field hospitals.
Yeah.
They had to get field hospitals.
So they're getting field hospitals. So we should be careful here. What is it about the Johnson & Johnson? What is it about the African Union? What is it about, what's it called now? Afrexim Bank? How is that logistic going on? When are we going to get the next vial in? Because a lot of Nigerians are coming out to take the vaccine, and we shouldn't stop this momentum we have started, please.
Well, 2 positive news with regard to COVID-19. It's very unfortunate, 3 million deaths. And as you pointed out, that's more than the population of some countries in the world. And it's disturbing, considering the fact that there are countries like Japan going through the 4th wave at the moment. But the positive news, in China, CanSino Biologics, which had developed an adenoid type 5 vaccine for COVID-19 before now, which is an injection, says that by next week it will start the clinical trials of an inhaler that can treat COVID-19. Maybe perhaps, that would be a great additional contribution, easier, to administer contribution to the attempt to find a solution to COVID-19. And then in the United States, we have some senators, 10 senators of the Democratic Party, led by Senator Bernie Sanders. I think Elizabeth Warren is also on that list, who are appealing again, like the 117 world leaders we talked about last week, that President Biden should waive the trade-related intellectual property rules, which India and South Africa provided leadership in asking for. However, where the catch is that 18 Republican senators are also opposing that, and they've also sent a petition to the president. And they are protectionist in their orientation, whereas the 10 Democrat senators are saying, look, if we waive this intellectual property rights, we'll be able to promote vaccine equity. We'll be able to create more manufacturing centers, across the world. But the Republicans are saying no, that that would be a violation of U.S. rights to research, and that the U.S. should not share its research. I think we can also lend our voices to say that President Biden, since he's a globalist, should be more interested in promoting this objective of vaccine equity, access, to the vaccine for the whole of humanity, which was the point that the WHO country representative in Nigeria was making at that briefing that you referred to earlier by Dr. Faisal Shaib. Yeah. Now, Dr. Faisal Shaib says surveillance will be ramped up. He says the incident at the Falomo Medical Center, as reported, was inaccurate. Yeah. He also reported that the presidential committee is making very great progress in Kogi State, which is very good news. But the question to ask and to urge the Nigerian authorities is, when are we going to get more doses of the vaccine? Yes, the people have taken the first dose, they've been well taken care of, and there is assurance they will get the second dose. But what efforts are we making to get more? That's the missing link in the briefing by the Director General of the MPHCDA, in my view.
Well, Adeswa, you'll recall that there were studies about why the COVID-19 pandemic did not take hold in Africa and kill us in our millions as some expected that it would. I wonder if there'll be a similar sort of study to investigate why we haven't had the kind of adverse reactions and deaths with the vaccine as we've seen in other climates.
I think that's very important. That's a study that should be carried out. After all, we're receiving the same vaccines. Although we've been told, you recall initially there was a particular controversial batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine that was shipped to over 11 European Union countries, where we began to see the blood clots issue develop from. And we were then assured at that time that that particular batch did not come to Nigeria, and we did not see any other African country report that they received that same batch. So we are yet to find out if it's as a result of the batch, the controversial faulty batch, or there's something else that's happening here.
Well, but it's interesting that the Nigerian authorities are saying that there have been no reported deaths.
Yes.
They've just been mild to severe. Even if you look at the mild to moderate severe side effects that we have seen in Nigeria, it looks like the point is correct when we're told that the benefits outweigh the risk. But AstraZeneca say, they're insisting that they are carrying out continuing research to see how they can further ensure greater effectiveness of their vaccine.
Very well said. And as well, hopefully we get to know how far with the Johnson & Johnson, because that'll go a long way. It's a one-shot dose. You give you one jab, you take it, you're good. So how far with that?
It all boils down to production, Rufai. We don't have enough vaccines around the world to even pick and choose at the moment. And it boils down to the production, and that's where the waiving of the intellectual property rights, which those senators in the US, like Dr. Abati mentioned, the DG of the WTO, India, and South Africa have been pushing for. However, there are those on the other side of the debates who say, so once we waive these rights, what then happens? We don't even have enough ingredients to make this production. So it's a lot of issues here.
That's another one. Thank you so much for your time, Adeswa. I really appreciate it.